The scent of disinfectant burned my nostrils as I pushed the heavy metal door open, stepping into the sterile corridor of Ravenswood Psychiatric Asylum. My sneakers squeaked against the polished linoleum, a sound that had become as familiar to me as my own heartbeat over the past 6 months. I clutched my clipboard tighter, feeling the rough edges of the papers bite into my palm. It was my shield, my proof that I belonged here, that I wasn't one of the patients wandering these halls with vacant eyes and shuffling steps. I was nobody. Just another underpaid nursing assistant trying to survive in a city that chewed up girls like me and spit them out without a second thought. My scrubs hung loose on my frame. I'd lost weight I couldn't afford to lose, skipping meals to keep the lights on in my cramped studio apartment. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting shadows that danced across the pale green walls, and I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the one that reminded me I was barely treading water. "Room 237 needs fresh linens," Nurse Patterson barked at me, not bothering to look up from her station. Her voice echoed down the hallway, sharp and dismissive. I was invisible to people like her, the kind who had stable lives, retirement plans, people who gave a damn if they came home at night. I nodded, though she wasn't watching, and made my way down the east wing. This was the restricted section, where they kept the patients who were deemed too dangerous or too fragile for the general population. The air here felt heavier, thick with secrets and suffering that seeped through the walls. My breath came shallow as I counted the room numbers, passing doors that remained locked, hiding stories I'd never know. That's when I saw her. Room 237's door stood slightly ajar, which was unusual. Protocol demanded these doors remain secured at all times. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the handle, every instinct screaming at me to walk away, to follow the rules, to stay invisible. But curiosity, or perhaps it was something deeper, something that recognized another broken soul, made me peek inside. She sat by the window, bathed in the pale afternoon light that filtered through the reinforced glass. Her dark hair fell in waves around her shoulders, and despite the shapeless hospital gown, there was something regal about her posture, something that didn't belong in this place of forgotten people. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her hands, delicate, with long fingers, rested in her lap like wounded birds. "They think I'm dead," she whispered, not turning to look at me. Her voice carried a melody, an accent I couldn't quite place. European, maybe Italian. "Everyone thinks I'm dead. I should have left, should have backed out quietly and reported the open door. Instead, I found myself stepping inside, drawn by the haunting quality of her words. Who thinks you're dead?" She turned then, and her eyes, God, her eyes were the color of storm clouds, gray and turbulent, locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. My husband. The man who loved me. The man who... She trailed off, her gaze drifting back to the window. "They told him I died 3 years ago." In the fire, the room suddenly felt colder. I wrapped my arms around myself, the clipboard pressed against my chest like armor. "I don't understand." "You wouldn't." A bitter smile curved her lips. "No one would. But I see things, hear things, even through the medication they pump into me. I remember. Alessandro. My Alessandro. She spoke his name like a prayer, like a curse. Does he still rule this city from the shadows? Does he still make men tremble with just a look?" My stomach twisted. I knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name, even if they pretended not to. Alessandro Moretti, the youngest Don to ever control the Eastern Territory. Ruthless, calculating, beautiful in the way predators are beautiful, mesmerizing and deadly. His face had been in the papers when he'd taken over his family's empire at 25, though the articles never explicitly stated what kind of empire it was. Everyone knew. No one spoke it aloud. "I need to go," I stammered, backing toward the door. This was above my pay grade, beyond my understanding. This was dangerous. "Wait." Her voice stopped me, soft but commanding. "What's your name?" "Emma," I answered before I could stop myself. "Emma Chase." "Emma." She tested it on her tongue, as if tasting it. "You have kind eyes, Emma. Tired, but kind. Will you do something for me?" Every rational cell in my brain screamed no, but I was tired. So damn tired of being invisible, of floating through life like a ghost. What? Tell him I'm alive. Tell Alessandro that Isabel is alive. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implications I couldn't begin to fathom. My hands trembled, and I pressed them harder against the clipboard. I don't. How would I even? The Sapphire Room, tomorrow night. He'll be there for the monthly settlement. Go to the back entrance. Tell them Isabel sent you. They'll bring you to him. Her eyes bore into mine with desperate urgency. Please, Emma. 3 years I've been buried alive in this place. 3 years he's believed I'm ash and bone. Someone stole me from him, from our life. Someone wants me erased, but I'm still here. I'm still breathing. The door behind me suddenly swung open fully, and Nurse Patterson's bulk filled the doorway. Chase, what the hell are you doing in here? This patient is under restricted protocol. Get out, now. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my clipboard. Nurse Patterson's meaty hand gripped my elbow, her fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. She yanked me out of the room, and I caught one last glimpse of Isabel, still sitting by the window, tears streaming silently down her porcelain face, her lips forming words I couldn't hear. The door slammed shut with a metallic clang that reverberated through my bones. You ever pull that stunt again, you're fired! Patterson hissed in my ear, her breath hot and sour. That patient is off limits, understand? I nodded mutely, my heart hammering against my ribs. She released me with a shove, and I hurried down the corridor, my legs shaky, my mind racing. I should forget this, pretend it never happened, go back to my invisible life where the biggest risk I took was buying the store-brand cereal instead of going hungry. But that night, lying in my narrow bed as sirens wailed in the distance, and my neighbor's argument bled through the thin walls, I couldn't stop seeing those storm-gray eyes, couldn't stop hearing her voice, tell him I'm alive. The Sapphire Room. I'd heard of it in whispers, an exclusive club where the city's elite and its underworld mingled in shadows and champagne. A place people like me didn't exist, let alone enter. The thought of walking through those doors made my stomach churn with fear. But something else stirred beneath the fear. Something that had been dormant for so long, I'd almost forgotten it existed. The smallest spark of purpose. Of mattering to someone, even a stranger locked away from the world. I pulled my threadbare blanket up to my chin, staring at the water-stained ceiling. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I'd decide. Tomorrow I'd either stay in my lane like a good, invisible girl, or I'd walk into the lion's den with a message that could change everything. The choice should have been obvious, so why did I already know, deep in my gut, which path I'd take? Why could I already feel the weight of expensive cologne in the air, hear the click of Italian leather shoes on marble, sense the danger that would wrap around me like silk and chains the moment I spoke those words? Sir, your wife is alive? The next evening arrived too quickly and too slowly all at once. I'd spent the entire day in a fog, going through the motions at the asylum, changing sheets, dispensing medications, avoiding Nurse Patterson's suspicious glares. My hands shook every time I passed room 237, but the door remained firmly closed. A guard now posted outside. They'd tightened security, because of me. I should have taken it as a sign, an omen. Turn back while you still can. Instead, I found myself standing outside my apartment at 8 p.m., staring at my pathetic excuse for a wardrobe. Everything I owned was either scrubs or worn-out jeans and t-shirts from discount stores. Nothing remotely appropriate for a place called the Sapphire Room. I settled on the only dress I had, a simple black number I'd bought for my mother's funeral 3 years ago. It hung loose on my frame now, but it would have to do. I was a messenger, nothing more. I'd deliver the information and leave. That's what I told myself as I took the bus across town, watching the neighborhood transform from broken streetlights and boarded windows to gleaming high-rises and luxury cars. My reflection in the bus window looked pale, frightened, a rabbit heading straight into the wolf's territory. The Sapphire Room sat nestled between a 5-star hotel and an art gallery, its entrance marked only by a subtle blue light above an unmarked door. I walked past it twice before gathering the courage to approach. My heels, the only pair I owned, scuffed and outdated, clicked against the sidewalk, each step feeling like a countdown to disaster. The back entrance, Isabel had said. I rounded the corner into an alley that smelled of expensive garbage, if such a thing existed, and found a steel door with a single camera pointed at it. My throat went dry. I raised my hand to knock, then hesitated. This was insane. I was nobody. A nursing assistant who could barely pay rent. What was I doing inserting myself into the world of a man like Alessandro Moretti? But then I thought of Isabel's eyes. The desperation. 3 years buried alive. I knocked. The door opened so quickly I gasped. A mountain of a man filled the doorway, at least 6'5", shoulders broad enough to block out the alley behind him. He wore an immaculate black suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, and his eyes swept over me with the efficiency of a security scanner. Lost? His voice rumbled like distant thunder. Isabel sent me. The words tumbled out before I could swallow them back. I need to speak with Mr. Moretti. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe suspicion. His hand moved to his hip, where I could see the subtle bulge of a weapon beneath his jacket. My heart stopped. Wait here. He pulled out a phone, turning slightly away but keeping his eyes on me. He spoke in rapid Italian, too quick for me to catch more than a few words. Then he listened, his expression hardening. When he turned back to me, his demeanor had shifted, not friendlier but more alert. Come. The interior was nothing like I'd imagined. We bypassed the main club. I caught only a glimpse of crystal chandeliers and beautiful people moving like schools of exotic fish, and went down a hallway lined with dark wood and artwork that probably belonged in museums. The carpet beneath my feet was so plush it felt like walking on clouds. Everything whispered money, power, danger. We stopped at a door at the end of the hall. The guard knocked twice, then once, then opened it. Wait inside, don't touch anything. He gestured me in, then closed the door behind me. The office was all leather and mahogany, bookshelves lining 2 walls, a massive desk dominating the space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and for a moment, I just stood there, staring at the lights spread out like fallen stars. From up here, the city looked beautiful, not the broken, desperate place I knew. Remarkable view, isn't it? I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. He stood in the doorway that led to an adjoining room, and every cell in my body screamed danger. Alessandro Moretti was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30 at most, and devastatingly handsome in a way that felt almost cruel. Sharp cheekbones, full lips, dark hair swept back from his face, but it was his eyes that trapped me. Dark as midnight, ancient despite his youth, holding depths of violence and control that made my knees weak. He wore a 3-piece suit in charcoal gray, the vest hugging a lean, muscular frame. A watch glinted at his wrist, platinum, probably worth more than my entire life. He moved with fluid grace, each step deliberate, predatory. 2 more men flanked him. Though I'd been so focused on Alessandro, I barely registered them. Sit. It wasn't a request. My legs obeyed before my brain caught up, depositing me in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. He circled around, settling into his own chair with the casual confidence of a king on his throne. Up close, I could smell him. Sandalwood, and something darker. Something that made my pulse race for reasons I didn't want to examine. You have 30 seconds to explain why my head of security just told me a girl claiming to have a message from my dead wife is sitting in my office. His voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of an Italian accent, deadly calm. 29, 28. Sir. My voice cracked. I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. Your wife is alive. I saw her. In the asylum. Ravenswood Psychiatric Asylum. Silence crashed over the room like a physical force. Alessandro's expression didn't change. Not a flicker, not a twitch. But something shifted in the air, a pressure that made it hard to breathe. The 2 guards tensed, hands moving toward their weapons. What's your name? Each word was precisely enunciated, sharp as a blade. Emma. Emma Chase. Emma Chase. He tested it slowly, as if memorizing it. And you work at Ravenswood? Yes. I'm a nursing assistant. Yesterday I went into room 237 and she was there. She told me her name was Isabel. She said you thought she died in a fire 3 years ago. She begged me to tell you she's alive. He stared at me for what felt like an eternity, those dark eyes dissecting me layer by layer. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like he could see every secret I'd ever kept. My hands gripped the armrest to keep from shaking. Luca. He didn't look away from me. Check Ravenswood's patient records. Room 237. I want a name, admission date, and every piece of information they have. 5 minutes. One of the guards, Luca apparently, pulled out a laptop and started typing furiously. Alessandro leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers beneath his chin. My wife died 3 years ago. I identified her body myself. Dental records confirmed it, so either you're mistaken, mentally unstable, or someone is playing a very dangerous game. I know what I saw. The words came out stronger than I felt. She's real. She's there. She knew your name, knew about the fire. She's been drugged, locked away, but she's alive. Why would you risk coming here? You understand who I am, what I'm capable of? He tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. You could disappear tonight, and no one would ever find you. Yet you walked through my door with this information. Why? Because I'm tired of being invisible. Because she looked at me like I mattered. Because something in me is so broken that danger feels better than the numbness I've been drowning in. Because she asked me to, I whispered instead. Because she's suffering, and no one else knows she's there. Boss. Luca looked up from his laptop, his face pale. Room 237. Patient admitted 3 years ago under the name Jane Doe, Yasser 47. No next of kin listed. Admitted by... He hesitated. By Dr. Victor Marchesi. The temperature in the room plummeted. Alessandro's jaw tightened. The only visible reaction, but I felt the rage emanating from him in waves. The name meant something. Something bad. Victor. The name sounded like a death sentence in his mouth. Of course. He stood abruptly, and I flinched despite myself, but he walked to the window, his back to me, tension visible in every line of his body. When he spoke again, his voice was barely controlled violence. Victor Marchesi was my uncle, my father's brother. He disappeared the night of the fire, and we assumed he died trying to save Isabel. The whole east wing of the estate burned. We found 2 bodies, Isabel's and a man we presumed was Victor. He turned, and the look in his eyes made me shrink back in my chair. If what you're saying is true, if my uncle faked both their deaths and has kept my wife imprisoned for 3 years, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Marco. He addressed the other guard. Gather the squad. Full tactical gear. We move on Ravenswood within the hour. Wait. I stood up too quickly, my chair scraping backward. You can't just raid the asylum. There are patients there, innocent people. Security, cameras, police response time. I don't care. He moved toward me with predatory speed, closing the distance until I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. This close, I could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. If my wife is in that building, nothing will stop me from getting her out. Nothing, then let me help. The words escaped before I could stop them, surprising us both. I work there. I know the layout, the security protocols, the shift changes. I can get you in without alerting everyone. His eyes narrowed. Why would you do that? Because people will get hurt if you go in guns blazing. Staff members who are just trying to earn a living. Patients who have nothing to do with this. I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze even though everything in me wanted to look away, and because it's the right thing to do. A ghost of something, amusement, respect, crossed his face. Then it vanished, replaced by cold calculation. You understand that if you're lying, if this is some kind of trap or delusion, you won't live to regret it? I understand. He studied me for another long moment, then nodded once. You'll ride with me. Marco, have the car brought around. Luca, I want building schematics and security details. Move. The guards scattered, And suddenly I was alone with Alessandro Moretti in his office, the weight of what I'd set in motion crushing down on me. I'd walked in here thinking I'd deliver a message and leave. Instead, I'd just agreed to help a mafia boss break into a psychiatric facility. What had I done? Alessandro reached for his phone, making a series of rapid calls in Italian. I caught words here and there: Assembla la squadra, armi, nessun testimoni. The last phrase made my blood run cold. No witnesses. When he finished, he looked at me again, really looked at me, and I felt pinned by that gaze. If you're wrong, if she's not there or not who you say she is, your life is forfeit. If you're right. He paused, something dangerous and possessive flickering in his eyes. Then you've given me back what was stolen from me. And I protect what's mine, Emma Chase. I protect it with everything I have. The way he said my name, like he was claiming it, owning it, sent shivers down my spine. A knock at the door. Boss, car's ready. Alessandro extended his hand toward me, a gentleman's gesture wrapped in threat. Shall we? I placed my trembling hand in his, feeling his fingers close around mine. Warm, strong, inescapable. There was no turning back now. The car was exactly what I'd expected, and somehow more intimidating in reality. A black Mercedes SUV with windows so darkly tinted they looked like pools of ink. Alessandro's hand remained on the small of my back as he guided me toward it. A touch that burned through the thin fabric of my dress. The door opened, held by yet another suited guard, and I climbed inside, sinking into leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Alessandro slid in beside me, filling the space with his presence, that intoxicating scent of sandalwood wrapping around me like a claim. 2 guards took the front seats, and I noticed the driver never made eye contact, never spoke, just started the engine and pulled smoothly into traffic. Tell me everything. Alessandro's voice cut through the silence. Every detail about what you saw, what she said. Don't leave anything out. So I did. I described Isabel's appearance, the haunting quality of her voice, the way she'd spoken his name like a prayer. I told him about her eyes, storm gray and desperate, about how she'd said someone wanted her erased. With each word, I felt Alessandro's tension coil tighter beside me, a spring wound to the breaking point. She's been medicated, I added quietly, heavily, from what I could tell. Whatever they're giving her, it's keeping her docile, confused. But she had moments of clarity. That's when she told me about you, about the fire. His jaw clenched, a muscle ticking beneath the sharp line of his cheekbone. Victor always was a coward. He wanted control of the family, thought my father gave me too much power too young. When Isabel and I married, it solidified my position, with both of us dead, with me destroyed by grief. He trailed off, staring out the window at the city lights streaking past. He could have taken everything. But you didn't fall apart, I said softly, understanding dawning. You got stronger. He turned to look at me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. I had no choice. I channeled my grief into power. Every decision, every move I made was in her memory. I became the monster everyone feared because I had nothing left to lose. His hand moved, almost unconsciously, to rest on the seat between us, inches from my thigh. If she's really alive, if I've spent 3 years building an empire on the foundation of her death while she suffered. The guilt in his voice was raw, unexpected. This wasn't the cold mafia boss from the news articles. This was a man who'd loved and lost, and was facing the possibility that his loss had been a lie. You didn't know, I whispered. You can't blame yourself for not knowing. His eyes locked on mine, dark and fathomless. Can I? The car slowed, and I realized we were blocks away from Ravenswood, parked in the shadow of an abandoned warehouse. Through the windshield, I could see 3 more black SUVs, men in tactical gear moving with military precision, checking weapons, speaking into earpieces. Fear spiked through me. This was real. This was happening. How many guards at night? Alessandro asked. All business again. 2 at the main entrance, 1 roaming the halls. But the restricted wing has its own security. Card access only, plus the guards stationed outside certain rooms. Since yesterday, they've increased patrols. I swallowed hard. Because of me. They know something's wrong. He pulled out his phone, pulling up building schematics. Show me the best entry point. I leaned closer, trying to ignore the heat of his body, the way my heart raced being this near to him. My finger traced the screen. There's a service entrance on the east side. Food deliveries, laundry, it's usually unmanned after 8 p.m. They rely on the card system. If you can bypass that, we can. He zoomed in on the restricted wing, room 237. How do we get there without triggering every alarm in the building? I thought about the layout, the security measures I'd seen implemented over the past day. The medication room is 2 doors down from 237. I have access. If I go in first, disable the cameras in that section. There's a control box in the supply closet. You could get to her without being seen on video. No. The word was absolute. You're not going in first. You're not putting yourself at risk. I blinked at him, surprised by the vehemence. I'm the only one with legitimate access. If your men go in first, they'll trigger alerts immediately. I don't care. His hand moved to my chin, tilting my face up to his, and the possessiveness in that gesture stole my breath. You've done enough. You brought me this information. I won't have you in the crossfire. People will die if you do this your way. I held his gaze, even though touching him felt like touching a live wire. Staff who are just working their shifts. Maybe patience. Is that what Isabel would want? Something flickered in his eyes. Pain. Recognition. His thumb brushed my jawline, a touch so gentle it contradicted everything I knew about him. You're braver than you look, Emma Chase. Foolish, but brave. Let me help make this right. My voice dropped to barely a whisper. Please. The please seemed to undo something in him. His hand fell away and he leaned back, running fingers through his dark hair. Fine. But you follow my instructions exactly. You have an earpiece, you're surrounded by my men at all times, and at the first sign of trouble, you get out. Understood? I nodded, not trusting my voice. He gestured to Luca, who'd appeared at the window. The door opened, and Alessandro helped me out with that same proprietary touch at my elbow. The night air was cool against my flushed skin as he led me to where his team had assembled. 12 men, all armed, all watching their boss with absolute loyalty. Alessandro spoke to them in rapid Italian, gesturing to the building schematics on a tablet one of them held. I caught my name, saw some of them glance at me with curiosity, others with suspicion. Then Luca was fitting me with an earpiece, the small device feeling foreign in my ear. Alessandro tested it, his voice coming through clear and intimate. Can you hear me? Yes, I said aloud, then jumped when his voice came through again. Good. You stay with Marco at all times. He's my best, and he'll get you out if things go wrong. Marco, the guard who'd been in the office earlier, nodded at me, his expression unreadable. He handed me a small device. When you get to the supply closet, press this against the control box for the cameras. It'll loop the footage. Give us a 5-minute window. My hands shook as I took it. This was insane. I was a nursing assistant, not some kind of spy. But then I thought of Isabel's face, her desperate plea. 3 years buried alive. I'm ready. I lied. The walk to Ravenswood felt surreal, like moving through a dream. Alessandro's team spread out, positioning themselves at strategic points. I approached the service entrance with Marco beside me, my work ID trembling in my hands as I swiped it through the reader. The lock clicked open. We're in, Marco murmured into his comm. The hallways were dimly lit for night shift, emergency lighting casting everything in eerie shadows. My heart hammered against my ribs as we moved through familiar corridors that suddenly felt alien, dangerous. Every sound made me flinch. The hum of the HVAC system, distant footsteps, the muffled cry of a patient somewhere in the building. We reached the restricted wing. The guard who'd been posted outside yesterday was gone. Shift change, probably. I swiped my card, praying it still worked, that they hadn't revoked my access. Green light. The door unlocked. Supply closet is 15 feet ahead on the right, I whispered, though I knew Alessandro could hear me through the earpiece. Marco and I slipped inside, and I fumbled in the dark for the control box. My fingers found it, mounted on the wall behind shelves of medical supplies. I pressed the device against it, heard a soft beep. Cameras are looped, Marco confirmed. Boss, you're clear. Through the crack in the door, I watched shadows move, Alessandro and his team, flowing through the hallway like smoke, silent and deadly. My breath caught when I saw him, saw the gun in his hand, the cold efficiency in every movement. This was who he really was, not the man who'd touched my face with gentleness, but the predator who'd built an empire on fear. They reached room 237. One of his men worked on the lock while Alessandro stood with his back against the wall, every muscle tense, coiled, waiting. The lock clicked. Alessandro was through the door before it fully opened, and I couldn't stop myself. I slipped out of the supply closet, following, needing to see, needing to know if I'd been right. The room was dark except for the moonlight through the window, and there, sitting in the same chair as yesterday, was Isabel. She looked up as Alessandro entered, and time seemed to stop. "Alessandro?" Her voice was small, broken, disbelieving. No, you're not real. You're another hallucination. They give me so many pills, I see you everywhere, but you're never real." "Bella." The word came out strangled, raw. Alessandro's gun lowered, forgotten, as he moved toward her. "Bella, tesoro mio, I'm real. I'm here." She stood on shaking legs, and I saw tears streaming down her face. "You can't be. You think I'm dead." "Everyone thinks I'm dead," Victor said. "He said you'd moved on, that you'd forgotten." "Never." Alessandro closed the distance between them, his hands framing her face with a gentleness that made my chest ache. "Never, amore. Not for a single day. You've been in my every thought, my every breath. I mourned you. I raged for you. His voice broke, and then they were holding each other, and I had to look away from the intimacy of it. The grief and relief and love pouring between them like a physical force. "We need to move, boss." Luca's voice was quiet but urgent. "Security will notice the camera loop soon." Alessandro nodded, but he didn't let go of Isabel. He simply swept her into his arms, lifting her as if she weighed nothing, and she buried her face in his neck, sobbing. That's when the alarm started, piercing, deafening. The sound ripped through the building. Red lights began flashing in the hallways. "They know." Marco grabbed my arm. "We need to go. Now." Chaos erupted. Alessandro's team moved into formation, surrounding him and Isabel. We ran through the hallways, my heels clicking frantically against the linoleum. Behind us I could hear shouts, security guards mobilizing, the building coming alive. We burst through the service entrance into the night, and the SUVs were already running, doors open. Alessandro placed Isabel in the back of his car, with a gentleness that contradicted the violence bristling around us, then turned to his men. "Get them out. All of you. I'll handle the loose ends." "Boss," Luca started. "That's an order." Alessandro's voice cut like steel. Then his eyes found me, standing there shaking, adrenaline crashing through my system. Something shifted in his expression, became more intense, more possessive. "Marco, take Emma with Isabel. Keep them both safe. If anything happens to either of them..." He didn't finish the threat. Marco simply nodded and guided me toward the SUV where Isabel sat wrapped in someone's jacket, still crying, still looking like she couldn't believe any of this was real. I climbed in beside her, and Marco slid into the front seat. The door slammed. Through the window, I watched Alessandro and 3 of his men turn back toward the building, weapons drawn, moving with lethal purpose. My stomach twisted. What was he going to do? The SUV pulled away, tires squealing, and I twisted in my seat to watch the asylum shrink behind us. In the distance, I could see more flashing lights. Police probably, responding to the alarms, and Alessandro Moretti, walking back into the chaos he'd created, ready to bury whatever evidence remained. Ready to make sure no one could ever hurt his wife again. Beside me, Isabel reached out with a trembling hand, grasping mine. Her skin was cold, clammy, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "Thank you," she whispered, her storm-gray eyes meeting mine. "Thank you for bringing him back to me." I squeezed her hand, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. What had I done? What had I set in motion? And why did I feel this strange, hollow ache knowing that Alessandro's gratitude, his protection, his intensity, would now be focused entirely on the woman who truly deserved it. The woman he'd loved so much, he'd built an empire on her memory. I was nobody again. Just the messenger who'd delivered the news and could now fade back into invisibility. So why did it hurt so much? The safe house was a penthouse in the financial district. All glass and steel and luxury that felt like a different planet from my cramped studio. Marco had brought us here directly, speaking in low tones on his phone the entire drive, coordinating with Alessandro's team. Isabel had fallen into an exhausted sleep against my shoulder, her breathing shallow, her body trembling even in unconsciousness. The drugs in her system, probably. 3 years of chemical restraint didn't just disappear. Miss Chase? Marco opened my door once we'd parked in an underground garage. We'll be safe here. The boss will join us once he's finished. Finished. Such a clinical word for whatever Alessandro was doing back at Ravenswood. I helped Marco guide Isabel to the elevator, her legs barely supporting her weight. A doctor was waiting when we reached the penthouse. An older woman with kind eyes who immediately took charge, leading Isabel to one of the bedrooms while speaking softly in Italian. And then I was alone in the living room, standing on marble floors that reflected the city lights from floor-to-ceiling windows, surrounded by furniture that belonged in magazines. Marco had disappeared somewhere, doing whatever guards did. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly freezing despite the perfectly controlled temperature. What was I doing here? I should go home. Call a cab. Return to my real life. Except I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I knew Alessandro was safe. Not until... I cut off that thought before it could fully form. I had no right to worry about him, no right to care. He wasn't mine to worry about. Hours passed. I sat on the leather sofa, too afraid to touch anything else, watching the sky slowly lighten from black to navy to gray. Dawn was coming. My shift at the asylum would start in 2 hours. Would there even be an asylum anymore? What had Alessandro done? The sound of the elevator made me jump. The doors opened, and Alessandro stepped out, still wearing his suit though it was rumpled now, spattered with something dark on the sleeve. His hair was disheveled, and there was a cut above his eyebrow, dried blood trailing down his temple. Our eyes met across the room, and the intensity in his gaze pinned me in place. Is she... He started. The doctor's with her. She's resting. I stood, my legs stiff from sitting so long. Are you all right? He looked down at himself as if just noticing the blood, the disarray. This isn't mine. The implication hung heavy between us. I should have been horrified, should have run. Instead, I found myself moving toward him, closing the distance before I could think better of it. You're hurt. I gestured to his eyebrow. I'm a nurse. Well, an assistant, but I can clean that. Emma. The way he said my name stopped me mid-step. You should go home. I'll have Marco drive you. You've done more than enough, risked more than you should have. This isn't your world. I know. My voice came out smaller than I intended. I know it's not, but you're hurt, and I can help, and then I'll go. Something warred in his expression. Conflict, calculation, something deeper I couldn't name. Finally, he nodded once and moved to the kitchen, settling onto one of the bar stools. I found a first aid kit under the sink. Of course there was a first aid kit, probably multiple ones, and brought it over, my hands steadier now that I had a task, a purpose. I dampened a gauze pad with antiseptic and stepped between his legs to reach his face. The intimacy of the position hit me immediately. I was standing between his thighs, close enough to feel his body heat, to see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, to smell sandalwood mixed with gunpowder and something metallic. This will sting, I warned, then gently pressed the gauze to his cut. He didn't flinch, didn't move, just watched me with that unnerving intensity, like he could see straight through me to all the broken pieces I kept hidden. Why did you really come to me? He asked softly. The truth this time. My hand trembled, but I kept cleaning the wound. I told you. Because she asked. No. His hand came up, wrapping around my wrist, not hurting but firm, inescapable. You could have reported it to the authorities, to the asylum administration. You could have done a dozen safer things. But you walked into the lion's den. Why? I couldn't look at him. Couldn't face that penetrating gaze while speaking the truth I barely admitted to myself. Because I'm tired of being invisible. Because I spend every day taking care of people who don't see me, going home to an empty apartment where no one cares if I come back. Because for one moment when she looked at me, I mattered to someone. The words spilled out, raw and honest, and maybe I wanted to feel alive, even if it meant risking everything. His thumb stroked the inside of my wrist, finding my pulse point. I knew he could feel how fast my heart was racing. You matter, Emma. His voice dropped lower, became something dangerous and seductive. You gave me back my wife. You walked into danger without hesitation. You've proven yourself braver than men I've known for years. His other hand came up, cupping my jaw, forcing me to meet his eyes. You matter to me. The words shouldn't have affected me like they did. He loved his wife. He'd just gotten her back, but the way he was looking at me, touching me, made heat pool low in my stomach, made my breath come shallow. Alessandro, she'll need time to recover, he continued, his voice still that low rumble that seemed to vibrate through my bones. Months, probably. The drugs, the trauma. She'll need therapy, medical care, safety. His thumb traced my cheekbone now, a touch so gentle it hurt, and I'll give her all of that, but I also owe you a debt, Emma Chase. One I take very seriously. You don't owe me anything. I tried to step back, but his legs closed around mine, trapping me gently. I did what was right. That's all. What's right? A ghost of a smile curved his lips, but there was nothing warm in it. Do you know what I did tonight at Ravenswood? What happens to people who cross me, who hurt what's mine? I swallowed hard, remembering the blood on his sleeve. I don't want to know. Smart girl. His hand slid into my hair, his fingers tangling in the strands. Victor wasn't there. The coward ran the moment the alarms went off. But his accomplices were. The staff he'd paid to keep Isabel drugged and compliant. The administrators who'd falsified records. His grip tightened slightly, not painful, but possessive. They won't be a problem anymore. Did you kill them? The question escaped before I could stop it. Would it matter if I did? Yes. I met his gaze squarely, even though fear and something else, something heated and wrong, warred inside me. It would matter. He studied me for a long moment, then released me, leaning back. I didn't kill them, but they'll wish I had by the time my lawyers and the authorities I do control are finished with them. Victor, though, his expression went cold, deadly. When I find him, and I will find him, that's a different story. I stepped back, putting necessary distance between us, and finished cleaning his wound with shaking hands. Applied a butterfly bandage, tried to ignore the way his eyes tracked my every movement, possessive and intense. There! My voice was hoarse. You should have the doctor look at it, but it should be fine. Emma. He caught my hand again before I could retreat. You can't go back to your apartment. Victor knows who you are now. The staff would have told him a nursing assistant helped me. He'll come for you. Ice flooded my veins. What? You're a loose end, a witness. Men like Victor don't leave loose ends. He stood, towering over me, and there was something fierce in his expression now, something that bordered on possessive fury. You'll stay here, under my protection. It's not negotiable. I have a job, a life. Your job is at an asylum that's now a crime scene. Your apartment is a target. He stepped closer, backing me against the counter, caging me in with his arms on either side of me. I protect what's mine, Emma, and like it or not, you became mine the moment you spoke Isabel's name. I don't let my people get hurt. His people. Like I was part of his organization now, part of his world. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a thrill through me that I immediately hated myself for. For how long? I whispered. Until Victor is found and dealt with. Until you're safe. His face was inches from mine now, his breath warm against my lips. However long that takes. And if I refuse, then I'll have Marco follow you 24 hours a day anyway. At least here, you'll be comfortable. Protected. And his voice dropped even lower. Isabel will want to thank you properly. She'll need a friend, someone who understands what she's been through. That was the argument that broke through my resistance. Not the danger, not the protection, but the image of Isabel, fragile, traumatized, waking up in a strange place after 3 years in hell. "Okay," I breathed. "Okay, I'll stay. But just until this is over. Just until it's over," he agreed. But something in his eyes told me he was lying. That once I was in his world, there would be no clean exit. He pushed away from the counter, creating distance, becoming the controlled Mafia boss again instead of the man who'd held my face like something precious. "Marco will show you to your room. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps." I nodded mutely and turned to find Marco had appeared in the doorway, silent as a ghost. As I followed him down the hall, I glanced back once and found Alessandro still standing in the kitchen, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Possessive, protective, dangerous. The room Marco showed me to was beautiful. All soft grays and whites, a massive bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, an attached bathroom with a soaking tub. Through the window, I could see the sun rising over the city, painting everything gold. I sank onto the bed, still wearing my funeral dress, and realized I was shaking, not from fear, though fear was there, but from the intensity of everything that had happened. From the way Alessandro had looked at me, touched me, claimed me as his. From the realization that I didn't want to leave. Even knowing he loved his wife, even knowing this world would destroy me, some broken part of me wanted to stay in his orbit, wanted to matter to someone powerful and dangerous, wanted to feel alive, even if it burned me to ash. A soft knock at the door made me jump. It opened to reveal Isabel, wearing a silk robe too large for her frame. Her dark hair brushed and shining. She looked more alert than before, though her eyes were still haunted. "Emma." She came into the room, closing the door behind her. "I wanted to thank you properly. You saved my life. You brought Alessandro back to me. I can never repay that. You don't have to. Please." She sat beside me on the bed, taking my hands in hers. Her grip was stronger now, her storm gray eyes clear. "I need you to understand something. Alessandro is complicated. He loves fiercely, protects obsessively, and he never forgets a debt." She paused, studying my face. "I see the way he looks at you, the way he's already claiming you as part of our world." My heart stuttered. "I don't know what you mean. Don't you?" A sad smile curved her lips. "I've been gone 3 years, Emma. 3 years of drugs and isolation while Alessandro built his empire on grief and rage. We're not the same people we were, and right now, you're the one who gave him hope, who proved yourself brave and loyal." She squeezed my hands. "Stay close to us. Let us protect you. You're family now, whether you intended to be or not." Family. The word echoed in my chest, filling some hollow space I'd carried for so long. "I don't belong in this world," I whispered. "Neither did I once." Isabel stood, moving toward the door. "But Alessandro has a way of making you belong. Of making you want to belong, even when you know better." She paused in the doorway, looking back. "Rest now. Tomorrow everything changes." She left, and I was alone with the sunrise and the weight of her words. Everything changes. I lay back on the impossibly soft bed, staring at the ceiling, and knew she was right. I'd walked into Alessandro Moretti's world thinking I'd deliver a message and walk away unchanged. Instead, I'd become tangled in something I didn't understand, claimed by forces I couldn't control. And God help me, I wasn't sure I wanted to escape. 3 weeks passed in a blur of luxury and danger that became my new normal. The penthouse transformed from a safe house into something else, a gilded cage where I learned the rhythms of Alessandro's world. Isabel grew stronger each day under the doctor's care, the drugs slowly leaving her system, color returning to her cheeks. She painted in the sunroom, attended therapy sessions, and slowly became the woman she'd been before Victor stole her life. And I watched Alessandro watch her, seeing the love in his eyes, the relief, the fierce protectiveness. It should have made me happy. It did make me happy. But it also carved something hollow in my chest that I refused to examine too closely. Victor remained a ghost, vanished into whatever hole men like him crawled into when empires collapsed around them. But Alessandro's network was vast, his resources infinite. Every day brought new reports, new leads, men coming and going from the penthouse with information whispered in Italian. I learned to read the tension in Alessandro's shoulders, the way his jaw tightened when a lead went cold. Marco became my constant shadow. Not quite friend, but not just guard either. He taught me which rooms to avoid when business was being conducted, which phone calls meant danger, how to move through Alessandro's world without drawing unwanted attention. Luca brought me clothes, designer labels that fit perfectly, somehow knowing my size without asking. I stopped protesting after the third delivery, accepting that resistance was futile. Isabel and I grew close in those weeks. She told me stories of her life before, her childhood in Milan, meeting Alessandro at a charity gala, falling in love with a man who wielded power like a weapon but touched her like she was made of glass. She spoke of the fire, the confusion, waking up in Ravenswood with no memory of how she'd gotten there. Victor's visits where he'd whisper poison about Alessandro moving on, forgetting her, building his empire on her grave. "He wanted to break me," she said one afternoon as we sat in the sunroom, late autumn light streaming through the windows. Make me believe I was truly forgotten, that coming back would destroy Alessandro more than staying dead. So I stayed quiet, took the pills, let myself fade. Her hands trembled around her teacup. Until someone finally saw me. I squeezed her hand, throat tight with emotion. This woman had become something I'd never expected. A friend, a confidant, someone who understood what it meant to feel invisible. But the closer I grew to Isabel, the more complicated my feelings for Alessandro became. He was attentive to his wife, tender in ways that made my heart ache. But his eyes found me constantly across rooms, his presence heavy and magnetic. The way he said my name, Emma, like a caress, like a claim. The casual touches as he passed. A hand on my shoulder, fingers brushing mine, standing close enough that I could feel his heat. It was Isabel who finally confronted me about it. "You're in love with him." We were alone in the kitchen, preparing dinner together, something normal, domestic, strange in this world of violence and luxury. I dropped the knife I'd been using to chop vegetables, the clatter loud in the silence. No, I'm not. He's your husband. I would never, Emma." She touched my arm gently, her storm gray eyes knowing I'm not angry. I'm not blind. And neither is he. Shame flooded through me, hot and acidic. "I'm sorry. God, Isabel, I'm so sorry. I'll leave. I should have left weeks ago. This is wrong. I'm wrong." "Stop." Her voice was firm, cutting through my spiral. "Listen to me. Alessandro loves me. He always will. But we've both changed. 3 years of believing I was dead changed him in ways I'm still discovering. And She paused, vulnerability crossing her face. "I'm not the same woman he married. The drugs, the isolation, Victor's manipulation. It broke something in me. I'm healing. But I'm different now. That doesn't make this okay," I whispered, tears burning my eyes. "You're married. You love each other. I'm nobody." "You're not nobody." She cupped my face, forcing me to meet her gaze. "You're the woman who saved my life, who proved herself brave and loyal. Who makes Alessandro smile in a way I haven't seen in years." She dropped her hands, wrapping her arms around herself. "I've been thinking about this for weeks, watching you both dance around each other, and I've come to understand something about the world we live in. Power, loyalty, protection. These matter more than conventional morality." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Alessandro needs someone who understands him now, who can match the man he's become. I'm saying that I care about you both too much to let pride or convention destroy what could make us all happy." She took a shaking breath. "I'm saying that in this world, men like Alessandro often have arrangements, and I'm willing to consider one if it means keeping our family together." The word family hit me like a physical blow. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious." She moved closer, taking my hands. "I love Alessandro, but I also love you, Emma. You've become my sister in these weeks, and I'd rather share him with someone I trust, someone who will protect him as fiercely as I do, than lose either of you." Before I could respond, the elevator doors opened. Alessandro stepped out with Marco and Luca flanking him, and I knew immediately something had changed. His expression was dark, triumphant, dangerous. We found him. His eyes locked on mine, then shifted to Isabel. Victor. He's been hiding in a compound upstate. We moved tonight. The air pressure in the room seemed to drop. Isabel's hands tightened on mine, her face going pale. This was it. The end game. The confrontation Alessandro had been building toward for 3 weeks. I'm coming with you. The words left my mouth before my brain could stop them. Absolutely not. Alessandro closed the distance between us in 3 strides. This is a combat operation. Victor will have armed guards, probably booby traps. You're staying here where it's safe. She should come. Isabel's voice cut through the tension. Both Alessandro and I turned to stare at her. She stood straighter, something fierce entering her expression. Victor took 3 years of my life, took Emma's safety, her normal existence. We both deserved to see him face justice. Bella, don't. She moved toward her husband, and I saw the steel beneath her fragile exterior for the first time. You've protected me for weeks, helped me heal. But I'm not broken anymore, Alessandro. And I won't hide while you finish this. Neither will Emma. We're both stronger than you think. Something passed between them, a silent communication built on years of love and understanding. Finally, Alessandro's jaw tightened, and he nodded once. You stay in the vehicles, bulletproof glass, armed guards. At the first sign of trouble, Marco drives you away. Non-negotiable. Agreed. Isabel kissed his cheek, then turned to me. Get changed. Wear the black outfit Luca brought you last week. The one with the reinforced lining. I realized she meant the leather jacket and pants I'd thought were just expensive fashion. They were armor. Light body armor disguised as clothing. An hour later, I was in the back of an SUV with Isabel, Marco driving, watching the city give way to darkness and trees. 3 more vehicles followed, filled with Alessandro's men. He rode in the lead vehicle, and I could see his silhouette through the windshield, straight-backed, controlled, lethal. The compound appeared through the trees like something from a nightmare. High walls, guard towers, spotlights sweeping the perimeter. Victor had built himself a fortress. Remember, Marco said quietly, his eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. You stay in the vehicle no matter what you hear, no matter what you see. The boss will have my head if anything happens to either of you. Isabel reached for my hand, and we sat together in tense silence. As Alessandro's team moved into position, I could see them through the windows, shadows flowing through darkness, professional and deadly. Gunfire erupted suddenly, sharp cracks splitting the night. I flinched, but Isabel squeezed my hand tighter, her face pale but determined. It felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then Alessandro's voice came through Marco's earpiece, speaking rapid Italian. Marco's expression changed, became harder, more alert. What? Isabel demanded. What's happening? Victor's trying to escape. There's a back tunnel. Marco was already moving the SUV. Following coordinates Alessandro was feeding him. The boss wants us in position to cut him off. We rounded the compound wall, and suddenly there was movement, a figure stumbling from a concealed exit in the hillside, running toward the tree line. Even in the darkness, I recognized him from the photos Alessandro had shown us. Victor Marchesi. Older than Alessandro, graying at the temples, still handsome despite the terror on his face. He saw our SUV and froze like a deer in headlights. Then Alessandro emerged from the tunnel behind him, gun raised, 4 of his men flanking him. The look on Alessandro's face was something I'd never seen before, pure, cold fury tempered by absolute control. This wasn't passion or rage. This was judgment. Marco, let us out. Isabel's voice was steady, calm. Ma'am, I can't. Now! Something in her tone made Marco obey. He unlocked the doors, though he kept the engine running, ready to evacuate if necessary. Isabel stepped out, and I followed before I could think better of it. Alessandro's eyes snapped to us, dark and furious, but Isabel walked forward until she stood beside her husband. Hello, Victor. Her voice carried across the space between them, clear and cold. Surprised to see me alive, functioning? Not the drugged, broken doll you tried to create? Victor's face went from terror to something uglier, hatred, resentment. You were always too weak, Isabel. Alessandro deserved better. The family deserved better than a pretty face with no backbone. And you deserved to rule? Alessandro's voice was deadly quiet. You who couldn't earn respect, so you stole it? Who couldn't defeat me, so you tried to destroy me through my wife? He took a step forward, and Victor stumbled back. You failed, uncle. Failed in every possible way, and now you face the consequences. You'll kill me? Victor laughed, brittle and desperate. Make me a martyr. The family will fracture. The family already knows what you did. Already stands with me. Alessandro's gun never wavered. You have no allies left, no escape, no redemption. Just one choice, how you die. Quick and clean, or slow and agonizing. I should have looked away, should have been horrified, but I couldn't tear my eyes from Alessandro's face, from the cold justice burning there. This was who he was, judge, jury, executioner. The man who'd held my face with gentleness now held his uncle's life with the same steady hands. Please. Victor dropped to his knees, all pride gone. Please, Alessandro, I'm family. Your father's brother. Doesn't that mean anything? It means you betrayed not just me, but everything my father built. Everything our name stands for. Alessandro looked at Isabel. Bella, he took 3 years from you. The choice is yours. Isabel stepped forward, and I saw steel I'd never imagined in her. I could ask for torture, for days of suffering to match the days you stole from me, but that would make me like you. She lifted her chin. Quick. But I want him to know. He failed. He didn't break me. Didn't break us. We're stronger now than we ever were. Alessandro nodded once. Marco, take the women back to the vehicles. No. I surprised myself by speaking. We came to see justice. Let us stay. Alessandro's eyes met mine across the distance, and something passed between us. Understanding, acceptance, trust. He nodded slightly, then returned his attention to Victor. You tried to take my world, Victor. Instead, showed me who I truly was, what I was capable of. He lowered the gun, and for a moment, I thought he might show mercy. Then he spoke to his men. Take him to the family council. Let them decide his fate. Let every member see what happens to traitors. It was worse than a quick death. Victor would face the combined judgment of the entire organization, his fate decided by the very people he'd thought to control. The humiliation, the prolonged fear, it was perfect vengeance. Victor's screams echoed through the night as Alessandro's men dragged him away. Isabel turned into her husband's arms, and he held her, murmuring soft Italian against her hair. I stood apart, suddenly aware of my outsider status. The fact that I'd witnessed something meant for family only. But then, Alessandro's hand reached out, and he pulled me into their embrace. The 3 of us stood there in the darkness, bound by violence and survival, and something more complicated than I had words for. It's over, Alessandro murmured. It's finally over. We drove back to the city as dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. At the penthouse, Isabel went immediately to shower, exhausted, but free. I started to follow Marco to my room, but Alessandro's hand caught mine. Emma, stay. We stood in the living room as the sun rose over the city, and he pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine. You were right to come tonight, right to demand to see it through. His hands framed my face, thumbs stroking my cheekbones. You're not a civilian anymore. You're part of this family, this world, and I protect my family. Alessandro, Isabel spoke to me about what she suggested. His dark eyes searched mine. I won't force anything, won't demand what you're not willing to give. But I need you to know. You matter, Emma Chase, not just because you saved Isabel, but because you're brave and loyal and you see me, truly see me and don't flinch. I'm in love with you. The confession tore from my chest before I could stop it, and I hate myself for it because you're married, because Isabel is my friend, because this is wrong. He kissed me. Soft at first, then deeper, his hands tangling in my hair, pulling me against him. It was possession and promise, desperation and control, everything I'd been denying for weeks. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. It's not wrong if we all choose it, he murmured against my lips. If we build something together, the three of us. Family doesn't always look conventional, Emma. Especially not in my world. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. How to share. How to be enough. You're already enough. More than enough. He kissed my forehead, gentle and reverent. Rest now. We'll figure out the details together. All three of us, as family. I went to my room in a daze, barely aware of undressing, crawling into bed. Sleep claimed me immediately, dreamless and deep. When I woke, afternoon sun was streaming through the windows. I found Isabel and Alessandro in the sunroom, and something had shifted between them, a peace, an understanding. Isabel smiled when she saw me, patting the space between them on the sofa. Come, Emma. We were just talking about the future, about what comes next. I sat between them, their hands finding mine, and felt something click into place. This wasn't conventional, wasn't what I'd imagined my life would become. But as Alessandro spoke about plans for Isabel's art gallery, about moving to a bigger penthouse where we'd all have space, about the ways we'd protect and care for each other, I realized I was home, not the apartment I'd left behind, not the invisible life I'd been surviving, but here, between these two broken, beautiful people who'd claimed me as fiercely as I'd claimed them, Alessandro's empire, Isabel's grace, and me, the girl who'd walked into danger looking for purpose and found family instead. To new beginnings, Isabel said softly, raising her teacup. Alessandro and I echoed her, and in that moment, surrounded by sunlight and the people who'd become my world, I was finally, truly seen. Finally home.